There's nothing quite as comforting as gathering around with mom friends and sharing stories. Stories have a way of making us feel better, and they're great reminders that no family is perfect, and that's okay. So join us as we share some stories and laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the iMom Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the iMom Podcast. I'm Abby with Chloe and Susan and Megan, and we're so glad you're joining us this week. We're talking about whether or not it's possible to avoid raising a self-centered child. And I think that it's always a battle that parents have to fight, to take their kids' focus off of themselves. But today, I think it's even more difficult. And that's my story. I have a friend who is an event planner. And she was telling me the other day, normally she does weddings and things like that, but she helped with a Sweet 16 party. And she said, not only did the kids all have their phones, and I think that's how it kind of came up, was she's anti-social media and she's only 26. And so she's just like really pushing back on it. She has a 6-year-old daughter. She's like, I'm not interested in it. I don't want my daughter to do it. So she's like, I was watching all these girls. Instead of being with the birthday girl and engaging with the birthday girl, they were all on their phones, and so was the birthday girl. But she said, in addition to that, at this party, at this venue that the mom had rented out, there were 3 different photo ops. One of them was like a photo booth, like the ones that, you see at different events and things. Another one was like a backdrop with a stand that's a photo stand. And then the third one was like a mirror, I think she said. Chloe, are you familiar with this kind of thing?
No.
It's like I think it's a mirror that has technology built into the mirror where you can so you can see yourself while the photo is being taken through the mirror.
Oh, wow.
And then there's...
Just because we do that on our phone, we can see it when we take pictures, selfies, so they want to see it.
Right. And so, you can take the picture and then send it to your phone or to your social or whatever like that. And she's like, and then of course everyone, like I said, had their phones and were taking pictures with their phones. And so, and that's just what the kids wanted, or I don't know if the mom thought that the girls would want that, but I'm like, how do we take what culture is encouraging our kids to do and push back on that to not raise self-centered kids? And so that's something I want to chat about today. And obviously it starts when they're younger. So we'll talk about all ages, not just teenagers. But first question, do you guys think there's a difference between self-centered and selfish?
It can be overlapping for sure. Self-centered is all you want to really talk about is you, see you, whatever. So is that selfish? Yes, it is selfish of other people's time. But I think selfish can always be, also be, if there's something, an object you want and you take it, is that self-centered or is that selfish too? Yeah, they kind of overlap. I don't know.
For me, I don't know if this is true or not. The difference in my head is self-centered is the way you perceive the world in relation to you, and selfish is the way you affect other people.
Yeah.
Like selfish is more external, self-centered is more internal.
I think I agree. It's like the self-centeredness means that you are, everything revolves around you. I think that's what you said, right? Things revolve around you. Right. Well, one of the main contributors to a self-centered personality in kids is an overindulgent parent. And like this idea that, we want to give our kids all these things. We want our kids to have the right teacher, get on these teams, do all these things. And so then when they say things that sound self-centered, we're like, why would you say this? But all this time leading up to it, we've been kind of creating that monster in them.
Well, I guess if we're going from the perspective of self-centered is you want all the attention on you. It's all about you.
The reason that I went with this episode, Megan, was I think that you suggested it because you were concerned about, even from James's age, even at 4 years old, you were concerned about like, what does a self-centered, like what signs are kids showing at 4, 5, 6 that are not normal, or how do I help my young child, who, it makes sense for a young child to be self-centered. They're a child and they don't understand that the rest of the world exists, really. Like, how do I help that young child grow and be less self-centered?
So Megan, I have
You have a second kid.
Yeah, you do. It's true. I have an example from James. It was so funny. We were at lunch. We were at a wedding with a lot of old friends. It was a destination wedding. And we all went out to lunch together. And one of my good friends has a grandson the same age as James. And it was a long lunch. It was taking a long time. So we took the two boys out to the lawn just to burn some energy. And we decided, actually it was one of the dads and me. So it was this other boy's dad. And so he decided for them to have races. Mm-hmm. And so they lined up at one end and we were at the other end and he said, go. And it was really close. And then we just kept doing it over and over. Well, the other boy was taking off before James even got to the starting point, and he beat James, and James just looked like burst into tears. Aww. And was like, I win. So here's a firstborn child who's always like racing his parents or something. They always let him win. Yeah. And he thinks
it was two firstborn children.
Yeah, they were both first.
And that didn't have any cousins. Yeah. And so they were both just having meltdowns when they didn't win. And yes, it was just so funny. Like, they couldn't understand.
It was shocking to them that they didn't win. I have to win. I always win. Yeah. It's about me. And yeah, real life, they learn that it's not always you. Mm-hmm. But that is kind of the beginning. So yes, if you're an only child, I guess it really gets rough.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of overindulging, I think, is not allowing your child to lose, making the way easy for them, or not letting them stumble, not letting them experience loss or, things like that. What are some other ways that we can avoid overindulging? And obvious ideas might be to say no, to be consistent, but then
I think some of it too is teaching just value other people. Mm. In other words, like in that picture taking thing or whatever, it's not, this is somebody's birthday. We're going to honor them. Mm-hmm. So it's really not about you capturing 100 photos of yourself.
Well, it's not considering anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Not the birthday kid.
Yeah. So jumping to that more 16-year-old age, remembering that we're honoring others, and can we put our phone away and not capture this moment for future self-promotion?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the baby toddler stage, I would say a big one is when they're a baby and they cry or they make a whimper or whatever, you're there to meet their every need. You're there and you go to it immediately, or for the most part. And I think as James has transitioned from a baby to a toddler, now he's 4, I realized that I was still like, when he said, I need milk, I was like jumping up in the middle of dinner and getting him milk. Or if I was talking to someone and he interrupted, I was like, yeah, what do you need? What do you need? Going to him immediately versus making him realize, I'm doing something, you've got to be patient and wait. And we're still working on that because he still is pretty impatient, but I'm trying to teach him tools and tips. Like, if you need me and I'm talking to someone, put your hand on my leg or my arm or whatever and say, excuse me, and I will get to you as soon as I can. But that's been a transition for me of the mindset of, he's not a baby anymore. He can wait a couple minutes so that I can finish whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
So do you have to move them from, you're not the center of mommy's world to you're not the center of everybody's world? Yeah. And how do you value other people? Because in the teenage example now, technology I think has ramped this up, whole selfie movement. And is it more a girl thing than a guy thing?
I think so.
Oh my gosh. I was talking to Abby earlier about this, like when I was a preteen and we had MySpace.
Just a few years ago.
No, this is a little while ago. Like, 2007, 2008. My friends and I would spend hours taking photos, mass uploading them to MySpace and just waiting for people to comment on them. And that was years ago. Like, and it was so, just putting that formative thought of like, oh, how can I grab the attention of these people? And we spent all of our time together doing that instead of like actually hanging out, spending time talking, like, I don't know. And it hasn't changed, obviously.
Right. That talking specifically then about taking photos of yourself. The other night I was at my parents' house for dinner and there was a picture a photo on the counter of my sister from like when she was 19, and my brother-in-law like started making fun of it because of like the angle and the lighting and my sister's like, this was before we got to see what the picture was going to look like. We just took a literal, like held out a camera in front of us and you got what you got. Half the time your whole face wasn't even in it. Yes. And I thought like how different as like when our kids watch us take photos of ourselves, because we do it too, you know, I've gotten to the point now where when someone takes like a group photo, like my girlfriends and I stand together and we take a group photo, everyone's like, okay, do you want to check it? I go, nope, I don't want to because I'm just over it.
Yeah.
And none of them really look that different. I'm like, as long as my eyes are open and I'm not like making a weird face, like I'm half paying attention, I don't care. Just, it's fine. And so I think that if our kids, especially our daughters, watch us react to photos and do things like that, I think we're helping send the message that you don't have to obsess over your photos, over, you know, these are little ways to be less self-centered ourselves that pass on those better messages to our kids.
And for girls, is it all about the looks? Is that it? Is that what's creating? We care about how things look, what we're doing. Because that's the whole posting
Do
thing.
people think I'm happy? Do people think I'm this? Yeah. Real quick, sorry guys. I did a little recent photo shoot with one of my best friends who lives out of town, and we must have taken 30 photos. And I did what you did, Abby. I said, and I don't want to see them. My pants were unbuttoned in every single photo.
Oh my!
And I'm like, this girl and I see each other once a year. All of our photos, my pants are unbuttoned.
Photoshop. Oh my gosh!
The baby was popping out.
No, this was a year ago.
Oh no, you weren't even pregnant.
No, I just had a good meal.
Well, so like, how do you think that sports and extra like curriculars play into all of it? Do you think like so? Chloe, you're an athlete. Megan, you're an all-star swimmer. Did your parents come to like I will never, ever.
Keyword all-star.
I will never let that drop ever. Did your parents come to all of your performances or games or whatever?
Oh, my parents did. My parents did. Yeah.
Do you think they should? Do you think parents like should be at all those things? Because like when a kid is playing a sport, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer to this, but how does it play into a self-centered attitude? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Without asking the question completely.
I don't know if my kids had that problem. We had too many kids, so Mark and I couldn't be at everything. And then I know Marky used to tease that, yeah, Mom, you missed that shot because you were talking the whole time in the stands.
Right.
So they knew I cared, but I don't think I was as focused probably as you know. So I don't know. We just weren't as, I don't know, Megan, what do you think? I missed a couple laps on the pool.
I mean, y'all were at a majority of our stuff, but I'm sorry. If you grew up in a family of 5, you become pretty used to not being the center of attention fast.
Mm-hmm. And did your siblings go to each other's stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. If they
I went to a lot of baseball games. He went to a lot of dance recitals. But I will say too, it's kind of nice when you're a teenager not to be the center of attention. You want to be flying under the radar.
You know, some kids are just super competitive. Is that self-centered or is that like a competitive drive? That could be one thing. But also I think, you know, we usually when our kids were super involved, like travel ball or something, the whole reason we joined that team is usually because there were other families who were like-minded that we were friends with. And so they knew we were joining because they were friends with the kids and we were friends with the adults. And this was going to be a fun family thing to do on the weekend.
Yeah.
So if I was talking in the stands, it was like, well, yeah, that's why we're doing this, because Mom can, you know, hang out on the stands and be with the people. And I think maybe that sends a message too, is it's not all about what you do on the court. It's about, hey, you know, we have relationships here. And this isn't really for you to go play pro ball in 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. I think another thing, and this might be Megan, more for the younger kids, and it relates to our episode from last week about parenting styles, is that we're encouraged to, you know, give kids a voice and listen to them and, you know, tell me, how do you feel about this? And so how do you listen to your child and validate your child's opinions, but not do it so much that they think that they're the boss or that the world revolves around them? You know, like, Sweetie, put on your shoes, and Sweetie doesn't put on his shoes. And then you go to Sweetie and you say, well, why didn't you put on your shoes? Well, it's, you know, at what point are you letting him feel like this is all about him versus what you said in last week's episode, Susan? There's 4 other kids that have to get to school. This isn't about you. It's time to just put your shoes on. Like, how do you prevent this democracy from forming when our kids kind of end up thinking that we're equals because they're given what seems like an equal voice?
This is all reminding me of the gentle parenting stuff that's really viral right now. Have you guys been seeing stuff for that? Like, I've just been seeing a lot on TikTok about it. And like, I understand, you know, I'm not knocking it. I understand parts of it, but some of it, I watch these videos. I'm like, I don't know if that would work for me and you know, our kid, I don't know. And I understand the need of it because I think there's a little bit of a pendulum swing from maybe the parent harsh
to gentle.
Yeah, just listen to mom and dad, don't ask questions, you know, to gentle. But I think empathy, okay, so it says that gentle parenting is composed of 4 main elements: empathy, respect, understanding, and boundaries. Those all sound like really good things. So I would wonder how you balance that.
You know, a lot of my friends' kids are in like the toddler, very young elementary stage. And I have a couple friends that are very, you know, stern. They're like, nope, we're not doing that, or nope, you're not doing that. Or, you know, they're pretty firm with their kids. And I have other friends that it kind of makes me laugh because they're like, well, I promised them that we would do this, or I'm letting him decide what like if he wants to go to the pool or whatever. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, you let your kids set your agenda?
Right.
I'm never. But to Chloe's point, I was talking to my pediatrician the other day because she and I have become kind of good friends because of my second whole surgery thing. And she is a little one that's kind of close to his age. And so she's actually moving practices. And I was talking to her, she's actually moving into neurology to specialize more. And I asked her, I was like, you know, what kind of sparked your interest in that? What do you think is like some of the biggest challenges of parents today? Is it like the whole vaccination fight? Is it COVID? Is it, you know, like, what are you seeing as the biggest thing? She's like, parents don't want to discipline. She's like, they don't want to discipline. And it's literally hurting their kids mentally and physically because kids need boundaries, obviously, and they need to be told what to do because they don't know what they're doing. And she was just like, but it's a really hard conversation that I tried to gently broach with them as their pediatrician because it's literally impacting them in their growth mentally and physically. As a general pediatrician, I have to tell them, like, you have to tell them they can't do that. And they're like, well, I've tried, but I don't want to tell them no. And she was
in
like,
charge?
yeah.
Just to bring it back to God maybe here, because this is, I think, the big thing we're missing is the first and second greatest commandment are love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. And whether you're 4 or 14 or 24 or our age, nowhere does it say, talk about love your little self-centeredness. You know, I mean, it just doesn't. And so if we're not teaching our kids, like Megan said, at a young age, not to interrupt or, you know, not to think of others when we're doing something, you know, then they're not going to get it at 14 and the photos are going to all be about them. But it is constant coaching.
Yeah.
It's constant, like even at James' party, I was going, now, James, you need to stand at the door and greet people and say, thank you for coming to my party. And, you know, remember that while it is your birthday, these people are graciously bringing you a gift and spending time celebrating you. It's always reminding children to think of the other people in the room. And you're right, Abby, as adults, if we're not doing that, if we're worried about how we look in a picture, are we really focused or like you, Chloe, spending time with your friends, but really spending more time thinking about how you're going to post about yourself.
Right, yeah.
And so there's so much more coaching that has to be done today because of social media.
Yeah.
That I do probably think it'd be great to do a, whole research on this, that self-centeredness is probably rampant.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's such an empty thing. No wonder why at the same time we see depression more,
Yeah.
we see suicide in teenagers more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's easy to say, well, our kids shouldn't be self-centered, but to say don't do something, you need to replace it with what to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that, we have these great calendars on our website, these character trait that you can build in your kids, these activities that you can do that are all opposed to self-centeredness in one way or another. Like thoughtfulness. 1 month is about thoughtfulness and what can you do to instill thoughtfulness in your kids? Or maybe you want to instill helpfulness or empathy, all these things that you can build up that will make it where there's not room for self-centeredness. There is a center no matter what. So what are you filling your child's center with?
That's good.
And there's little things that you can do, like little real life examples. Like when the child's teacher assigns extra homework and your kid's like, ugh, Mrs. So-and-so is such a jerk. And you're like, well, you know what? Maybe Mrs. So-and-so had a bad day. Help the child be empathetic. Help them understand that there's life outside of their world and other people are experiencing things. What are some other things you guys think of that we can teach our kids?
Well, when we were in Montana on vacation, Chloe just dropped her mic. Mic drop. I had brought a game to play with James. It was like Chutes and Ladders, but it was dragons, and he loves dragons. And we played it a couple times, and he was great. We also played Crazy Eights. First couple times at both, he was great. And then, of course, I didn't let him win. And that was a shocker. I think you have to introduce those kinds of things where they do lose. And we had, over the course of the week, a lot of discussions, he and I, about you can't always win, James. That wouldn't be fair. And, Chutes and Ladders, look, sometimes I go up, sometimes I go down. It's all part of the fun.
Oh, that's good.
And if I don't win, it's okay because you can win next time. And just, always talking about, you need to celebrate me when I win. Look, I celebrated you. I was so happy when you won. It's teaching them that.
Yep.
Whether, it's a basketball game when they're 10 or a game when they're 4. They got to learn to celebrate others.
That's so good.
And I think too, taking them to help other people, whether it's like I took James, one of my friends had a baby, and I had him like help make cookies or something like that. And I had him come with me to take them, and he had all these questions like, well, why aren't these for me? Why am I, why are we taking them to someone else? Same thing with like the birthday party. I'll wrap gifts and I'll be like, is that for me? And I'm like, no, it's not. We're taking it to your friend's house. It's for them. So kind of getting them more aware, like you said, of outside of them. We do things for other people because other people exist outside of us.
Yeah, I think that narrating what you're doing can help with that. They might see you wrapping a present. They might go to the party, but when you actually talk them through, hey, we're wrapping this present for Bobby.
Bobby's in the room. Bobby's our producer.
Bobby. Yeah. We're wrapping
one of James' best friends is named Bobby.
Okay,
so
yeah. Like actually talking it through because they're just not going to be in that headspace. So actually narrating it and letting them be more conscious of it, I think is a great tip.
What's the gift?
We're not actually giving it to you, Bobby. What do you think, Chloe?
I don't know how I would do this practically because I'm not, with my kid Earthside yet. But
Earthside, I like that.
But, I think a big thing Trent and I pray a lot is that our family would be really honoring. And there's a pastor named Ken Claytor out of Awakening Church in Gainesville. And he says, we give honor up to God. We give honor down. We give honor all around. And we want to, in our family, honor everyone. Honor, the checkout person at the store. Honor teachers. Honor coworkers. Honor friends. Honor everyone. And I don't know how that would maybe like look in a narrating way, but I really want that to be a core value of our family.
Well, I think that if you even just repeating that or using these little sayings that help kids remember and be more thoughtful about whether or not what they're doing is honoring.
Yeah.
I don't think that enough of us really intentionally focus on something like that takes a child outside of himself.
Yeah.
There's everything in the world is telling them to look at themselves. What are we doing that tell them to look outside of themselves?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let us know what you think. Chime in on Instagram. If you follow us on Instagram, or if you don't, you should. We're at imom.com, imom.com. We'd love to hear what you think about these conversations, and we'd love to give you a shout out on a future episode. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMom podcast. iMom is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMom Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.